Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing this Worldgorger Dragon Reanimator combo deck from Roodslay. This deck won a legacy challenge, but also it has top 32 and top 16 to challenge this month as well, I think, with the same player. So absolute big props to them, give them a shout out and let's play their deck. As I'm recording this, it should be noted that the European Legacy Masters has just finished and the final was Blue-Black Reanimator versus Blue-Black Reanimator. So I thought you'd much rather see this Worldgorger Dragon combo deck rather than see one of those like I did last week. So, what is this deck trying to do? Well, we have the traditional reanimation style stuff going on here. So we have Entomb, we have Unmask, which we can target ourselves, put cards in the graveyard, Thoughtseize, Cabal Therapy, loads of ways it can target our opponent or ourselves to put creatures in the graveyard. And those creatures are Griselbrand, Atraxa, Archon of Cruelty, and of course, Worldgorger Dragon. And we're reanimating them with Reanimate, Animate Dead, and Dance of the Dead. Dance of the Dead is a weird one. There's a whole boatload of text. I'm not going to go into it right now. But essentially, it's like Animate Dead, except your creature doesn't untap. And you can pay to untap it. Basically it. So what we're planning on doing here is the reason we've got all of these permanents is because we want to put Worldgorger Dragon into play. What this does is it exiles all permanents we control. So, that'll make the Dance of the Dead or the Animate Dead fall off, which will then kill the Worldgorger Dragon, which will then bring back the Animate Dead, which will then reanimate the Worldgorger Dragon, which will then make all these fall off, and so on and so forth. Now, what we do is, whilst this is going on, we have the ability to Underground Mortuary, so this will keep surveilling every single time because we're exiling our permanents. This comes back, we get to surveil as much of our library into our graveyard as we want, or if we have something like an Atraxa, we dig a whole bunch of times. As well as any lands we have kicking around, we just get to float the mana on each iteration, and then we end up generating enough mana to start hard casting some bits and pieces. Also you have the Griselbrand, so we can just draw a bunch of cards. And yeah, that's pretty much what we're trying to do here. We've got some fast mana in Dark Rituals and Lotus Petals to power out. It's been a very long time since I've played Worldgorger Dragon. I think before it was not a thing in Legacy for a while, because this was banned once upon a time. I think I haven't played it since before then. So, there we go. So we have the triple surveil lands, load of fetch lands, 3 basics, 2 bios. Why do we have bios? Well, we want to have the surveil lands anyway, so we may as well splash green for a nice tasty sideboard juke. So our deck is obviously very susceptible to graveyard hate. So what we do is we just board in some Sedgemoor Witches, some Witherbloom Apprentices, and some Chain of Smog. Chain of Smog, we target ourselves, and then we just continually target ourselves with copy after copy. If we have Witherbloom Apprentice, we drain our opponent out. If we have Sedgemoor Witch, we make infinite creatures. Pretty good, and we have 3 Duresses to help complement this little strategy. And that's what we're doing here. I hope I can do Roodslay proud, because they've been putting up some absolute numbers right now, and it would be an absolute travesty if I didn't feature them on the channel. So, without further ado, like and subscribe, and let's get this show on the road. So we've got a hand here that allows us to Entomb Reanimate some big monster. That seems like a perfectly good way to approach a game of Magic the Gathering. Prismatic Vista. So we could be looking at someone like Omnitel or a blue-white control deck. Those would be my first assumptions here. Wait for our opponent to crack this and then we'll probably Entomb in response. No cracking. Am I worried about days? Potentially. I think we can just play this a little bit safe here and just get Underground Mortuary first. Don't really want this as a thing we draw, because it's not very good with any of our creatures, apart from the Worldgorger Dragon. Okay, so if we're playing around the days, we're doing this a little bit slower, but I guess we have multiple reanimates here, so I can live with this. Let's go for Entomb. Okay, we're just straight up in there, aren't we? Let's get this Atraxa in. Let's go for Reanimate on our Atraxa. I assume we're going to see something from our opponent here. A Brainstorm. Interesting they didn't fight over the Entomb. Alright, they're just straight up conceding to that. I think our opponent is on a sort of control deck style line. I don't think that means we're going to be sideboarding into these, but we will be sideboarding into the Duresses. I'm not expecting, if it's like a blue-white X control deck, I'm not expecting like a big haymaker for our graveyard like ley lines or whatever. I'm expecting like little incidental pieces like your surgicals or whatever, and they're mainly going to try and fight us on the stack with counter magic or kill our creatures with white spells, which is why I don't really like these, because they don't go very well into like the heavy removal suite that our opponent is possibly working with. So we want to have all of our hand disruption, which is obviously a huge amount of hand disruption here. How much fast mana do we need? We probably do need some. I don't think I want to be messing with this. This just allows us to get things up and running before our opponent gets to do their bits and pieces. Drawing extra cards is going to be very good, especially since the opponent's going to probably kill it with a plow. And yeah, it becomes hard to know what the take is here. Like, are we trimming on like a Lotus Petal or two? Maybe we'll trim down like something like this. We're going to have to mulligan this one. We're going to have to mulligan this one. This one is no good, really. Do I think we can get a better 4? Yes, I do. Alright, this is a much better one. So I have Animate Dead. We do not need this Griselbrand. That can go. We want to keep the Entomb. Probably just get rid of those. That gives us a second land as well. If we see some fiercer graveyard hate for our opponent, then we can obviously work around it. But we're currently in a situation... Alright, so they have a Soulguide Lantern. Sure. We're currently in a situation where we don't get to really choose what we're playing around. I'm just trying to think. Do I want to play around Stifle here to make sure we get another land? I think I do. I think we are just getting a swamp here. So I wasn't expecting the blue-black mana source. I'm a little bit hesitant as to say what our opponent has. I'll tell you what they almost certainly do have, and that is counter magic. Go for a Reanimate on Troll. I'm not expecting this to resolve. But we're playing around Days. We're doing the things our deck allows us to do. Okay, they're just getting rid of that. Sure. That obviously makes other reanimation spells worse for us down the line. Psychic Frog. I'm going to cast an Entomb, which I'm fully expecting to be counterspelled. It was not counterspelled. That is interesting. Do I want this Archon of Cruelty just to get rid of this frog right away, or do I just want the Atraxa? Probably just want the Atraxa here. Undo that mulligan. We getting dazed? We are getting dazed. Alright. So we kind of had to do that in a way, because otherwise they're going to get hit him with this. They're going to draw a card. They're going to have more resources to fight next time. They didn't interact with the Entomb, and we have another Animate Dead. If I didn't have another Animate Dead, I'd probably just take the hit and then go. But the fact that we can just go straight in. Alright, so we've got an Orcish Bowmaster's hitting the bin. Psychic Frog coming in for 2. We're going to drop to 18. Let's see if we can go again, shall we? Any good? Alright, they have a Force of Will this time. I don't know if they had that last time and they just didn't care about the Entomb. But we are, unsurprisingly, in quite a lot of trouble. So with some sort of Esper tempo deck. I imagine the white is for the good white removal spells. And the blue back is for basically all the other best cards in Legacy right now. We can go and get a Surveil land here. We need to find a reanimation spell. Our deck plays a lot of them, but the ones that cost us life, like actual Reanimate itself, become more problematic the more our opponent beats us down. So yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised to see them pitch some more cards to make it more difficult for us to reanimate something. I think it puts us to 12, which is effectively 11 because of this Marsh Flats. So Psychic Frog connects. Let's go and get our Surveil land. We don't need another Surveil land right now. Reanimate. We'll do the thing that we have available to us. If our opponent counterspells this... Oh, okay, they didn't counterspell it. So we are looking alright. So we have a plow. So that's going to gain us some life and buy us a bit more time. And hopefully this trigger is going to be enough. So, what am I seeing here? We don't have anything great to reanimate. There's only one artifact, so we take that. And there's only one land. There's only one creature. So we're looking for a sorcery and an instant. So there's only one instant. There's one enchantment. And the sorcery, we probably just want to Cabal Therapy ourselves here. And what do we get from doing this, though? We can Worldgorger and Surveil a bunch until we get the Griselbrand. Sure, I can work with this. So we're going to get the other Surveil land now. Cabal Therapy tagging ourselves. We will name Worldgorger Dragon. Our opponent's got one card in hand. So we're just going to loot this until we can put an Archon of Cruelty into play as well. Get this Worldgorger Dragon. So this is all triggering. All our stuff's going away. The Worldgorger Dragon. All our stuff's coming back. So we get our Surveil triggers here. Oh, I've messed that one up slightly. So we put the Underground Mortuary triggers on top here. Another Animate Dead is not what we need here. And we just kind of do this whole song and dance a few more times. Right, our opponent's just scooping it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to surveil our... we're going to keep surveilling stuff until we hit an Archon of Cruelty. And then we can just put the Archon of Cruelty in. Ordinarily, you'd be able to do something that gets you extra cards, like a Griselbrand, where you then draw a bunch of cards up. And you just sort of continue it doing that way. But yeah, we are on the board. A little bit rusty on the old Worldgorger loops, but here we are. Let's go to round 2. This hand doesn't actually do anything. We'd just be relying on our Underground Mortuaries, which is not a solid game plan. This, on the other hand, does feel like a solid game plan. We probably lose just one of the Griselbrands is fine here. We don't need either of them. So we can put in a Griselbrand, we can put in a Troll, we've got some options. Okay, so they probably take the Entomb, unless they're planning on taking out both of our reanimation spells. Right, I took the Entomb. Understood. I don't think I want to Thoughtseize my opponent here. I think we're on cycle the Troll. The next time we can Thoughtseize and reanimate ourselves. Let's get ourselves another swamp. So we would lose 8, 9, 10 to do this. So we could go to 2. A little precarious. Right, our opponent's scooping it up to us putting Griselbrand in play. Not a bad way to be. Now I'm expecting our opponent to have a whole bunch of stuff that we need to deal with in terms of our graveyard. So I'm going to board in our transformative package here because mono black, I'm expecting ley lines and that sort of jazz. Daffy Voidwalkers, it's going to be hard. So what are the ones we actually get to take out here? Worldgorger and Dance the Dead seem like the obvious ones to go first. We just take out all of our big monsters and our Entombs and our Reanimates. Just take it all out and then we'll put them back in when we work out what we're doing here. So hand disruption, I'll take some of that. We've got 9 cards left to bring back in. So we already have our Trolls to cycle. So having something that we can use against our opponent seems good here, which is where these come in. And then where do we go from here? Like, none of these cards seem good in the current configuration of what we've got going on here. I guess Dance to the Dead might be able to reanimate one of our creatures if it dies and they don't have graveyard hate. This also can animate things from our opponent's graveyard. I guess that's okay. There's probably a way where you keep some amount of your Entomb package in, but I'm going to completely take out all of our hyper graveyard focus lines. So this is Troll, Reanimate Troll, which is fine. We can also Cabal Therapy our opponent. So if they start with a ley line or something, they did not start with a ley line. I'm just going to pass it over. If our opponent cracks this fetch, I will crack our fetch as well. I don't want to get opposition agented. Am I cycling this Troll? Our opponent could reanimate our own Troll. No, I think that's... If our opponent plays an opposition agent and gets our Troll, that's not the end of the world. It's not great though, is it? A polluted delta. We'll just get a regular swamp for this one. We can go and get an Underground Mortuary at some point. Cabal Therapy targeting our opponent here. I have to imagine they have some sort of graveyard hate. I'm guessing Fairy Macabre. If they give us a chance to name, we shall see. Because if they had Leyline, it would be in play. If they had Daffy Voidwalkers, it would be in play. Well, they did have an Oppo agent. They've also got Surgical Extraction and a Reanimate of their own. So if I cast Reanimate, they will surgically extract all of our Trolls and we'll lose this Troll in our hand. If I cast Cabal Therapy now, they might surgically extract anyway. Not a huge fan of this. I think the best play is to do nothing. What are they going for? Some sort of end of turn play, perhaps? Just a shadowy backstreet. A swamp cycle. They're just going to reanimate our creature. They're going for a him here. We lost Reanimate and Sedgemoor Witch. Okay. Are they going to go for one of our Trolls? They're going for our Sedgemoor Witch. Right, let's name this Surgical Extraction that we know about. If they fire it off, then we can name something else. No, they're going for our Reanimate. That's pretty good. I think our opponent's going to have us on toast here. But if we go for the Reanimate, then they surgically extract the thing we hit. This is not really a good way of doing this. We get to take out their opposition agent and maybe slow their roll a little. Or are we trying to take out the Fatal Push? If we take out the Fatal Push, they can't kill our other guy if we get it. But then we need more time. Okay. It's a really tough call. Then we're just going to take out the agent here. Leave them with just Wasteland and Fatal Push. I was kind of hoping I would be able to go and fetch for all of my Surveil lands instead of milling them, but here we are. The Wasteland can hit our green source, makes it more difficult for us to cast our Witherbloom Apprentice, I believe it's called. And there is one right now. So I have to wriggle through this Fatal Push whilst taking 4 a turn. 4 turn clock. Got Oppo Agent? They did not. Right, this is our last Underground Mortuary. Troll of Khazad-dum. 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana. I still don't think this is where I want to be. A Duress. Well, that deals with part of our problem. We'll try and fire it off nearer the time we're trying to actually go off. Because what we don't want to happen is our opponent to have more stuff in hand that we need to worry about. And we just play our guy out when maybe if we wait a turn it's better. We don't have a lot of time left in this game. Marginal Thinning versus 6 life. That's a tough one. I think I'm going to keep this in play. A Cabal Therapy. Alright, let's dress our opponent. Fatal Push. Shoulder's Edict. And a Doughty Voidwalker. So we need to Cabal Therapy, naming Shoulder's Edict. And then we have to spike exactly what we need here. They should fire off the Shoulder's Edict now, I think. Well, I don't know. Do they think we're going to take the Shoulder's Edict? So our opponent just has a couple of Doughty Voidwalkers. So we just have to find Chain of Smog. Like, we could play out to block here, but it doesn't radically change what's happening. Because I know they can just dump some Doughty Voidwalkers into play anyway. Which puts us to 2. There's one of the Douthies. Bayou to Underground Mortuary. I'm going to crack this Verdant Catacombs for the very, very marginal thinning we're getting out of this. Get Bayou. 1 draw to rule them all? No. We are just stone cold dead to this Doughty at that point. Okay, so now we know the hatred is the surgical extraction. Does that change anything here? I don't think so. Like, this Dance of the Dead still looks bad. But again, we can bring back one of our guys and go again with the combo, so I don't hate that. I think this is fine. I don't think I want to play any of these reanimation things. Our opponent's got their own reanimates and they've got like Doughty Voidwalkers and stuff. I think the sideboard plan here is fine. Maybe we can live the dream of doing it on turn 1 with Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual. I will keep this, I think. We've got to draw 8 of our bits and pieces, but we can unmask our opponent and maybe get something good out of them on turn 1. So we're going to bin off our Dark Ritual here because we can use Petal plus Swamp to Animate Dead, something good from their hand. Now the issue here is we can't Animate Dead anything because our opponent will surgically extract it. So what is the plan here? Do we take the scariest thing? And in that case, what is the scariest thing? Because there's quite a few scary looking things. We could take the Barrow-goyf. I'm a big lover of that one hitting us. Don't like the Reanimate, but it is what it is. They can't at least disrupt our hand, which is something. They only have 1 mana. We could try and cut them off of being able to do anything. Take the Barrow-goyf and we use the Animate Dead. Our opponent gets to use this surgical extraction. And it costs us our Lotus Petal. Yeah, we're trading too many resources here. Whatever we're trying to do. It's a really tough one. I'm kind of tempted. I don't want them to help them reanimate their own thing. Oh, this is a real conundrum. So our opponent's just going to straight up reanimate. Where we put in? Right, we're going to take the surgical, I think. I'm going to play out some bits and pieces. And then another piece of discard is really good for us. Allows us to get something like a Barrow-goyf on the go. Cabal Therapy. The scariest thing our opponent has is the Barrow-goyf, in my opinion. I would quite like to have a Barrow-goyf of our own. Is that better than Emperor of Bones? I think so. Alright, so now we've got a Barrow-goyf. Barrow-goyf versus Doughty Voidwalker. So when we mill cards, they get them. But we have a lifelink threat, which will win the race. Right. So if we mill any creature cards, we get to put them into our hand because of the way that Barrow-goyf is worded. This does mean our opponent gets access to the cards that we're exiling here. Ooh, that wasteland is pretty annoying. Emperor of Bones. This is slowly going to shrink our Barrow-goyf. Marsh Flats. I don't hate that. Maybe we're just firing off this Chain of Smog and just trying to strip our opponent's hand. They've got 3 cards in hand. We know all of them. If we Chain of Smog, do they want to take our last card? Maybe. Maybe not. We're best off doing that first. Alright, I'm just going to try and ride this Barrow-goyf to victory. I think that means we're just getting a swamp here. Let's grow the Barrow-goyf. Bowmasters and a Reanimate. They're going to fire it back. They did not fire it back. This gives us more damage though. Yes, our mill. Do we hit any creatures? No. We are kind of gassing up our opponent's hand. Or the potential hand. Right, another Doughty Voidwalker. Swing for 5 here. But we're gaining life on every hit. If they don't remove the Orcish Bowmasters, we get to reanimate that. Which isn't impressive, but it's not nothing either. Not really the game I was expecting to play. Let's see what they remove. They might just get rid of our Lotus Petal. Yeah, there it goes. They're leaving the Emperor of Bones back. So we have a 3-5. Well, if we've kept that thing, we might have had a different route this game, but that's okay. I don't think we need to mill anymore. Just going to take it, aren't they? Let's just get some chump blockers. It's our opponent from casting the Reanimate in their hand. It does shrink our Barraglyph, but we can just have some chump blockers here. Removal spells become very awkward for us. Our opponent now gets to kill us with their own combo. If they see the line. They had the combo sewn up because they could just go get back Witherbloom Apprentice and then go get back Chain of Smog. The fact they haven't done that gives us a little bit of air in this game. They're just coming in for attacks. Alright, they left one of them back. I'm glad they didn't see the win there. When they're getting back here. Right, so they're doing the Witherbloom Apprentice now. So they have the Chain of Smog for next turn. Ah, they just said they didn't see the line. Going to reanimate their Voidwalker now. So they have the win next turn. Really have great choices here. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. What are we supposed to do? I don't think we have any plays. If our opponent does we just have to pretend this card in our hand does something. They're going to Chain of Smog themselves and kill us with our own combo. And that is the game. Alright, a tricky one. I quite like mono black decks, generally into reanimated decks. It puts them in a horrible position of our own graveyard becomes a liability. Like our opponent's got Doughty Voidwalkers, Surgical Extraction, and Emperor of Bones. Like we're not doing graveyard stuff very well. So we have to pivot to this other plan. And we went for this Barraglyph line that might have been okay. But maybe the turn we Chain of Smog wasn't the right thing to do. But it was trying to pump up our graveyard and try and validate what our opponent's got going on. So if they don't send the Chain of Smog back to us, then we get to reanimate one of their guys, and then they lose the Reanimate in hand anyway. If they do send it back to us, then they lose everything anyway. But yeah, just didn't quite come together. Let's go to round 3. Our opener for round 3 doesn't get us where we need to go, so let's send that one back. We have an Entomb and Dance of the Dead. What does this actually do for us? Like we can generate some mana. But I think the plan here is just going to be Dance of the Dead. Our creature doesn't untap, but if we have an Atraxa, that's a-okay with me. So I think we're just going to get rid of this Griselbrand and do our thing. All right, so we're probably looking at a Painter's Servant deck. That's what Great Furnace usually says to me. I like our game 1 spot a fair bit here. Let's cast the Dark Ritual. I will cast this Entomb. I will get the Atraxa. I will Dance of the Dead it. This makes it bigger. The Vigilance doesn't undoes the downside of Dance of the Dead. It comes in tap, we only have to untap it once. We get to do that very soon. So we get this. We get another enchantment. The only sorcery here is the Cabal Therapy. We can get a Marsh Flats. And then we get to take either a Troll of Khazad-dum or a Griselbrand. I think we take the Griselbrand here. And we play this out. This allows us to untap our Atraxa in the next turn if we want to do that. Other plays we have available to us is to Cabal Therapy, target ourselves, name Griselbrand, put Griselbrand into the graveyard, and then profit from there. I think that is better than untapping the Atraxa here. And that will lead to an infinite combo more often. I think this pause from our opponent is probably them reading Dance of the Dead, because it's quite the essay. So note this one. An Underground Mortuary. It's Cabal Therapy, target ourselves. Let's name Griselbrand. Let's Animate Dead Griselbrand. I would like to draw lots of cards, please. Okay, we're cooking here. I think I'm going to draw some more cards. No Worldgorger Dragon, no Entomb. We can... How much have we got? So this is 3 mana, 4/5 mana. Just the 5 mana. Okay, so let's unmask ourselves, pitching this Reanimate. Let's get rid of this Archon of Cruelty. Cast a Dark Ritual. Animate Dead, targeting our Archon of Cruelty. We get some life, we get to strip our opponent's hand of a card. And we get another card for ourselves, which could be the thing that lets us go infinite and just win the game now. It was not. Okay, so let's cast this other Dark Ritual. Let's have a look what our opponent's working with. See if there's anything unusual in their hand. This game should be won at this point. We have no other plays to make. Just discard a bunch of lands. Alright, our opponent gets to discard 2 cards, or discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. They discarded 1 card and drew 1 card. And then they scooped up the game. So our opponent is going to have some number of ways of interacting with our graveyard. They're probably going to have tutorable ways of doing that. They're also going to have things like Ensnaring Bridge, which can mess with our creatures. So this is one where I think we want to have the combo from the sideboard here. But I don't think we want these Duresses. So I think we're going to keep some amount of our normal sort of combo type stuff. So we're going to get rid of the Dance of the Dead and the Worldgorger Dragon. I think we still want some Entombs, so we're going to trim on these Griselbrands. We can still pitch Entombs to Unmask. Trim on the Archon of Cruelty. And that gives us 4 Entombs for these 3 creatures. Still have the Animate Deads and the Reanimates here. We're probably just trimming some more Animate Deads. Try something along these lines. Like Duress can be good against Painter, but it can also be pretty stinky at the times. What does this hand actually achieve? We can make a turn 1 Archon of Cruelty if our opponent isn't messing with us, because we can unmask ourselves. Let's see what their plan is. Otherwise, we can start doing some Underground Mortuary type stuff. Get our little Sedgemoor Witch in. No play there. Do I think our opponent has magical extractions? I normally expect lots of action for our combo here. Okay. We tag ourselves as Unmask. I think we pitched the Sedgemoor Witch. Let's try a Reanimate and see if our opponent's got a thing. Sometimes you just got to put your opponent to the test. Alright, we did pretty good at putting our opponent to the test. We got a mountain out of their hand. Fable. Ensnaring Bridge. Yep, this is one of the things I suspected our opponent from having, which is why we brought it into the other plan. We still got a reasonable exchange off this Archon of Cruelty. A Sedgemoor Witch. Let's do some surveilling here. Go into the graveyard. I could play this Sedgemoor Witch right now. I don't think that's worth doing. I think we're probably on the cycling Troll of Khazad-dum line. Thins our deck slightly, gets us another surveil land for next turn. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. Sure. This means our opponent has another mana source because they're willing to give up there as a saga. I don't think that they're going to be relying on the treasure from the shaman for it, but it's possible. They might also not care about the actual artifact itself. Oh, I passed through my opponent's end step there. It's awkward. Alright, let's Cabal Therapy our opponent. Let's name... I think it's Goblin Engineer I want to name. It could be... It probably should be Painter's Servant, but we'll see. We hit the Painter's Servant. Okay. Not a bad one. So now we will Swamp Cycle to get ourselves another Underground Mortuary. Get our Surveil on, see if we can work towards that Chain of Smog. We do not require this. That can go into the graveyard. Right, so our opponent gets to cycle away this Leyline in the Void now. At least we know what one of our opponent's draws was this game, I guess, because otherwise it would be in play from the beginning. What do you got? Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Yep, this is Graveyard Hate and Combo Potential. And it's not the one, is it? Alright. I think I'm going to play out my Sedgemoor Witch. This means we might have access to Cabal Therapy in the near future. We can make some tokens with these Dark Rituals. It's going to be tricky for our opponent to win with the Agatha's Soul Cauldron combo because we have blockers. And we can make more blockers pretty much at will here because this makes little wormy things. The worms, the pests. Okay. A Grindstone. Not exactly a surprise there. Thorn of Amethyst. That does not stop us from what we're trying to do. Because the copies of Chain of Smog are copies. We're not casting them. You just copy it and choose targets. We obviously have to find it though. The Unmask, not the most helpful. I guess we are in Pass Town over here. If this Archon was a Griselbrand, we would have won this game. But such is life sometimes. I think our opponent is trying to cast something they can't cast under their Thorn. That suggests to me Fable the Mirror Breaker is in our opponent. No, it wouldn't be. It'd have to be a 2-mana thing, wouldn't it? Maybe another Thorn. We'll see. This is how we get to win the game. It is. That's exciting. So we'll cast this for 2 mana. Cost 2 mana, gives us the 3rd mana back. So we have 3 mana here. This guy costs 2. This guy costs more. So we need to Dark Ritual again. And we cast this little friend here. We tag ourselves with Chain of Smog. We discard our Unmask. And we copy it. Same targets. And we do this till our opponent dies. They need to have something like a Lightning Bolt. Things like a Braid won't do it here. I doubt they boarded in much in the way of removal, which is why this little pivot plan is so good. Because it changes the focus from graveyard to the in-play zone. Or the battlefield, as I believe it's called. In-play zone, what am I doing? Exile and Chain of Smog, that doesn't stop the combo working. So we're just doing copies. Alright, our opponent scooped it up, and that's 3 rounds on in the bag. We are 2-1. Let's see what round 4 brings. This hand has a lot of things that can go wrong. Namely, if we play this Underground Mortuary and never find a land, we are absolutely cooked. It's already like a mulligan because we've got a couple of cards that don't really do anything. So why not take a mulligan and try and get a better hand? Yes, this works right. Turn 1, we Underground Mortuary. Turn 2, we Thoughtseize ourselves, Dance of the Dead, the Worldgorger Dragon, Surveil until we hit Griselbrand, then put Griselbrand in play, draw a bunch of cards. Sure. That works for me. If we get hit by a Wasteland, we can still work our way out of it with a bunch of things. Alright, Lotus Petal and Swamp. Okay, so we're probably getting Doomsdayed here. Oh no, we're getting the full Entomb package from our opponent here. If we draw a Dark Ritual, we can win the game. Well, it's not really winning the game. We just kind of do the Worldgorger, the plan. I don't think we're winning this game. We're going to try and see a few more cards, but as soon as our opponent targets our hand with anything, we're going to say no thank you. Another Lotus Petal. That'll do. So, are we supposed to just be on the play and have a good time? The Cabal Therapies, I'm kind of preferring Duresses here. Because there's lots of different things and we could miss with the Cabal Therapy, but we can't miss with the Duress and things we want to hit. Sure, I think we just go ahead and give that a try. Our opponent has no idea what we're playing, so we have the upper hand in that respect, and we're on the play. We might just end up being ships in the night, and then our opponent possibly wins the 3rd game because they're on the play. I'm not sure the Reanimator mirror is where we ideally want to be. We don't really have interaction because we've got a transformational sideboard. Whereas our opponent might have things like Bathy Voidwalker or Fairy Macabre or whatever. This is a turn 2. Given what our opponent did last turn, is this fast enough? I don't think it is. I think we need to do something good on turn 1 or disrupt our opponent's hand. Okay. I can keep this one. Do we need to... I think we're going to do it like... If we do it like this, and then if our opponent Thoughtseizes us, they can't take both of our Reanimates if we're going to strip our opponent's hand of things. So I think we go Duress first, and then see what happens. Makes of the Moon, Entomb, Reanimate, Animate Dead. We don't want them taking our hand. We could take our opponent's Animate Dead here. They unmask us. They probably pitch the Archon of Cruelty. And then where are we going? Yeah, this is kind of an ugly one, isn't it? Let's map through the lines. So if we take the Unmask and then do nothing else, then our opponent can play the land, play the petal. They don't have an immediate play. It's back to us. If we draw a land, that's great for us. If we don't, then that's a little bit awkward. If we take the Entomb, then our opponent unmasks us, or they unmask themselves if they draw a reanimation spell, and that goes very poorly for us. If we take the Animate Dead, then they can unmask us, pitch in this Archon of Cruelty, and then have the Entomb. That doesn't seem the worst. I think I'm going to take my opponent's only reanimation spell. I will play out my Lotus Petal. We don't care about their Magus of the Moon. If they want to unmask themselves, then that helps us out. If they unmask us, they almost certainly take the Thoughtseize. The other option here is the Thoughtseize straight away and hit the Archon of Cruelty, but that feels a touch risky to me. So our opponent draws any of their reanimation spells and they're just super live. I guess they're super live regardless, right? Because they take, if we... Right, so yeah, so we're getting Thoughtseize here. So that's what they drew. Because if we spend the Lotus Petal to Thoughtseize our opponent, we might not be able to Animate Dead at all. Whereas this way we can take a hit and then draw an Unmask and still be able to take our opponent's card. So I think it works out better the line we've taken. Right, they took the Thoughtseize, yep. So we need to draw an Unmask, some hand disruption, Entomb our own. Reanimate's probably not the one, is it? And now we're going to be in this weird holding pattern until one of us draws the right thing and wins the game. Cabal Therapy. Right, so probably losing our Animate Deads here. In any order. The two cards that are the same card. A Duress. What am I supposed to do with this Duress? I think I want to take my opponent's Unmask here. Yeah, this game has become quite silly. So we can draw Entomb or Thoughtseize or the Cabal Therapy that's still in our deck. And all of these things do something for us. Alright, they've drawn land. They could crack the Petal just to make a Magus of the Moon and get some pressure on. I don't hate that, to be honest. Our opponent agrees, I think. Sure, so we're not going to have any Surveil lands. A Thoughtseize, there we go, that's what we wanted. Thoughtseize, target you, take this Archon of Cruelty. Reanimate your Archon of Cruelty. Goodbye, your things. So now we can get Surveil land. Our opponent is Hellbent, and they're going to die in short order to our Archon of Cruelty. Alright, we tied up the match. Now, what do we do for game 3? So, having all these things to like mess with our opponent's like anti-graveyard plan isn't a great idea because all of our stuff can put our opponent's thing as much as it can be ours. So I think what I'm interested in here is possibly some Cabal Therapy action, just so we have more interaction early doors. So maybe we'll trim some Dance of the Deads just to get this extra action in. And we'll go for this Worldgorger. Actually, we'll keep the Worldgorger in and just have one Dance of the Dead. Alright. I'm not confident because we're on the draw. Me and my opponent are doing very similar things. We both know that, well, we don't know how much stuff the other player is going to have. But our opponent's looks like a more traditional Reanimator build, so it's probably going to have some amount of Leyline / Surgical / Fairy Macabre. And that doesn't bode well for us. I imagine it's probably Fairy Macabre because that also hits your own cards in your graveyard. And that's something that Reanimator players want to do quite often in the face of opposing Reanimates and stuff. Hopefully we can work this one out. I don't think this is where I want to try and just pivot entirely. No lands. Go back into the deck, please, hand. Right, let's throw this one back. We're very susceptible to our opponent Thoughtseizing one of our good cards. I would love this to be a 5 card hand. I think we're going to mulligan to 5. No. That doesn't work for us. No reanimation spell. Not good. Alright, let's go to 3. Got a land. No reanimation spell. Bit of hand disruption. Probably not relevant. Creatures we don't want. It's probably better than 2 though, isn't it? So we'll get rid of... Do I want some more mana? I don't want to keep this troll, so we have a second land, but it does create a thing for our opponent to do. I think the troll is fine. Like, if our opponent's reanimating troll, that's not the end of the world. Like, it takes 3 to 4 hits to kill us, depending on the amount of fetches we've cracked and Thoughtseizes we've cast. Our opponent did keep 7 though, so we should almost certainly be dead here. It's just the difference of winning a die roll in this matchup is extreme. Our opponent just played a land and passed. Not a fan of having a Griselbrand in my hand, if I'm being honest. So our opponent is probably going to cast an Entomb and then untap and bring it back in some way, shape or form. Okay, so they can Cabal Therapy themselves. I don't really want them to Cabal Therapy themselves and get their Griselbrand back. So I guess we have to take the Cabal Therapy. Weird game, weird choice, but this mirror match is going to skew really bizarrely anyway. So many things that our opponent has. Badlands and nothing. So we can cycle this Troll of Khazad-dum, but it does give our opponent a Reanimate target. Oh, jeez. And they're definitely going to reanimate this. I don't think we can afford to do that. Maybe we reanimate in our opponent's turn. Sorry, we cycle in our opponent's turn. But if we're just going to be staring at each other, I guess we're supposed to just continue staring at each other. Unmask. Okay. We can use that. Not right now, but we can use that to take our opponent's Griselbrand or our own Griselbrand and then reanimate it. If we get given the chance. I don't really want to cycle this Troll of Khazad-dum, but we kind of need the land if we draw a reanimation spell that isn't reanimate. Right, so we draw a swamp now. Excellent. So now any reanimation spell off the top is live for us. Land for our opponent. A Lotus Petal. I will play it out and I will pass. So if we'd have cycled that troll a few turns ago, our opponent probably would have killed us by now. Right, our opponent has the show and tell sideboard plan. That's what the Underground Sea means. Whether or not they have it in, I don't know. So we're actually supposed to unmask our opponent here. The reason being, we can see if this will actually work or not. Okay, none of these things will matter here. So we just get their Griselbrand. So if we did that and we saw like a Fairy Macabre, then we could adjust what we're doing. We're not on the highest of life totals though. So I think we're going to pass and just beat our opponent down and then draw some more cards. All right, nothing from our opponent. We get to bash with their Griselbrand. Let's do exactly that. I'm going to draw some more cards. See if we can put this one to bed. We can unmask our opponent again to make sure nothing squiffy is happening here. Borborygmos Enraged. What does this do? Discard a land to deal 3 damage. 3, 6. I don't think we can clean up our opponent here. I kind of want to get this Borborygmos in play. Let's just have one of those. This will shut off reanimates for our opponents. So we can cycle this troll. Get a land. Play this out. 3, 6, 9. Cycle this troll. Get a land. Ping our opponent for 3. Ping our opponent for another 3. Ping our opponent for another 3. So we know that our opponent can't deal with it. We just need to find a land in the top so many cards of our library if we activate this Griselbrand. Underground Mortuary to the face. So we managed to win a game versus Reanimator where we never reanimated our own creatures. That's kind of wild. But we managed to get there. This matchup is obviously very weird. Our opponent kept a curious hand. Like, it had a turn to be able to go, but was quite susceptible to disruption. And they just never found the other pieces. Alright, so that's 4 rounds in the book. We are 3-1. And the one we lost so far was a 1-2. So, not too shabby. Let's see if we can put the 4-1 on the board. We're into the final round. We have a turn 2, potentially. Okay, I will keep this. Opponent is a fan of the channel. Let's see if they still are after we do horrible reanimator things to them. We see what land our opponent plays, and that will inform us as to whether or not we need to fire off a Cabal Therapy before we do any reanimating. So I would like to cycle this troll. Alright. Is this going to be a deck where we need to Cabal Therapy, naming Endurance? A Noble Hierarch. And playing the Noble Hierarch. Just fair creatures so far. Right, let's cycle this troll. And I think we just want a regular swamp here. A Worldgorger Dragon, you say? I'm going to cast an Entomb. I'm going to get Atraxa. I'm going to reanimate Atraxa. If our opponent has interaction for this, that is unfortunate. They did have the endurance. Maybe we should have Cabal Therapy them for endurance, really. I think that one might be on me there. I didn't even mention it as a thing. Alright, so we also got an Atraxa out of our opponent. So there's some sort of natural order deck. But we have a way of putting another creature in the graveyard. We just need any reanimation spell anyway. 2 mana. What is this going to be? Springheart and Antuco. They're going to be making some friends. Yeah, if we take that one slower, then we just get to Cabal Therapy, our opponent naming Endurance first. That would have been a little bit smarter. Cabal Therapy, then we're going to name Natural Order, because that's the thing that snowballs this game the hardest. Another Endurance. Wow, we really should have named Endurance. We could have had it off. Alright, let's name Endurance this time. Try to get some surveil action going. We do not require that. Yep, if we'd played this game a fraction smarter, we would have been pretty good. Just didn't need to do that at all. Building off the one-off collect roof. We're so far behind now. We just played it. I say we. I just played that first turn, or the second turn, horribly. There's no need to go for it there. Right, enable Hierarch. They're going to crash for 3, or they're going to crash for 2. Or they're going to make a little friend here. No, they could have made another Hierarch. No, did they draw a natural order? Because that's just lethal. Yep, Crate Hoof, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20. Boom. Yeah, we got clowned on pretty hard there. But that was our own fault. And I can't really argue with that. Right, I think we're going to go for some switcheroos with the old transformative sideboard here. So we're going to strip out some Dance of the Deads. I still have Thoughtseize here. How much do we want all of this sort of plan? We need to cut 9 cards, which is quite a lot, isn't it? So we're probably cutting, like we did before, we get rid of some of the Griselbrand and an Archon of Cruelty. Maybe get rid of these. And it still leaves us looking for 3 more things to cut. Cabal Therapy has some pretty obvious names, so I'm not opposed to keeping that one around. Maybe we're just trimming a little bit on some of these things. How useful are these creatures? Archon of Cruelty isn't great here because they're never going to have... They're always going to have loads of creatures to sacrifice. So just having the 2 ones that draw a bunch of cards is fine. Something along these lines. We don't really have ways of finding our Chain of Smog, which is part of the problem. We have a Chain of Smog. We have nothing to go with it. The lands, I think we can do better than this. That's not really better, is it? I guess we keep... So we have the Mortuary. We have this. We have this. Probably get rid of Swamp Petal. And we find another black card. We can chuck it into the Unmask. And try and get them before the big clutch turn when they're going off. Right, we're both down to small resources. But we had a pretty good chance of winning that first game and just messed it up. I don't think I want to reanimate. It's not what I require. That does tell our opponent that we have a reanimation spell in hand. More or less. That's probably how I'd interpret it from the other side. Elvish Reclaimer. Pretty good against graveyard shenanigans, that's for sure. A Lotus Petal. Let's pass it over. Don't feel great about our position here. But we probably should have won game 1, really. And that was on me. Sometimes you get the vibe that your opponent doesn't have it. And then they do. And you could have played around them having it, and you just feel terrible. Right, so it's going to hold up Bajuka Bog at instant speed. Witherbloom Apprentice. I don't believe our opponent has much in the way of removal spells. So I think we can start deploying the friends. I don't want to deploy his Lotus Petal yet because our opponent might disrupt it in some fashion. Like they might say, oh, actually, I will play his Collector if I've got in my hand. It will deny them some mana. Or they have the Outland Liberator and they get to do something with it that way. What's our opponent going for? Is it going to be Cradle? It is Cradle. It's rarely wrong to play a Cradle. Queen Sun Zenith for a Dryad Arbor. Our opponent's holding up an activation of their Reclaimer. Then going to get Talon Gates and phase out our Witherbloom. Which means we're probably casting... I think I want to unmask our opponent first. And the plan is to get 2 Witherblooms so they can't Talon Gates them both out, but this stops them having like something really scary. Endurance, Endurance, Green Sun Zenith. I don't care about any of these. Green Sun Zenith is the one most likely to mess us up. So we play out our second Witherbloom. And then our opponent can't Talon Gates of Madara out our Witherbloom Apprentice. And then next turn we can just combo off. They're probably deploying the Endurance now. Just getting some pressure. We can take a hit for potentially... Oh no, they're getting the Dryad Arbor as well. Sure. So this is going to be a hit for 6 if they want to go that route. But I think they leave up the Reclaimer. Threaten something spooky. I'm not really sure what they can have, really. Something peculiar that I've never seen before. But I don't think they've put True Believer on the land. I think that'd be too good. Alright, so we have perfect information. We have this game won. I'll take 4 of your finest damage. And they're just hoping we don't have it at this point. This is life loss, so something like a Glacial Chasm won't defend it either. There's no point playing this Thoughtseize. It's just not necessary. And that, as I say, is the ball game. Alright. I think I like this plan. Our opponent's probably going to consider this plan a little bit more. Which means Maybe we trim back on some of our guys and go a little bit more into the reanimation plan. Just kind of hedge a little bit. But the only real way we do that is by bringing in more stuff like this. Trimming like on a Sedgemoor. Alright, we'll just have another Griselbrand in there. So we can discard it up to our own activities. I hate how slow this hand is. But it has two different ways to try and win the game. I think we have to keep this. If our opponent goldfishes us, they probably win. But we have an Entomb line into Reanimate. Okay. And if that doesn't work, we do have our other combo. So we kind of have them coming and going. We just need to take a little bit of time to get there. If this was just a basic swamp, I'd be happy with this hand. Is our opponent going to play a 1-drop in their deck full of 1-drops? They are. A shocker indeed. Surveil. Yes, I'd very much like a swamp. It gets us towards the 4 mana we need to combo out with the other direction of combo. A Reclaimer. This gives us Entomb Reanimate right now if we want it. And we're going to get the Griselbrand. I think we get the Griselbrand so we can try and poke a hole in our opponent's hand. Top card of our library is a swamp. Play the swamp. It's Entomb. I believe we're getting Endurance here. Oh. 7 puts us to 5. We're looking for explicitly like hand disruption here. I think that's okay. Okay, we can unmask our opponent here. We can get rid of an Entomb. We don't need any of those. Endurance and a Fatal Push here. I'll take the Fatal Push. So they go 1 land, 2 land. This will only be a 1. And they go 1, 2, 3. And if they don't play the Talon Gates, they can't get rid of our Reclaimer. I think this is okay. Because we just combo our opponent off next turn. What am I missing that they can get here? Let's get Dried Arbor. No, Underground Mortuary. Okay. If this puts a land into the graveyard, then we lose. Okay, it's not a land, so it didn't go. Okay, so we get rid of a troll. Is that true? Yes, probably. We get rid of a land and probably get rid of a Thoughtseize, an Entomb. So they need to draw. They can't put a fetch land and a Talon Gates in play. Yep, so they phase out our Griselbrand. They attack us with the Reclaimer. It gets 2 higher triggers. That means it hits us for 3. 4 mana. Oh, did they just draw a natural order off the top? Oh. Criminal. We punted game 1, so we deserve to lose the match at the end of the day. All right. We gave a good count of ourselves there, apart from in that last round. And the deck was certainly interesting. Let's have a little chat about it. So, the Worldgorger combo is obviously the unusual thing that we need to talk about here. So let's pull that to one side in terms of the slots that it occupies. So I'm not 100% convinced that the Worldgorger Dragon is necessarily the best thing we can be doing. Because if you don't have more stuff in hand to make use of the mana that you're generating, or you don't have a Surveil land so you can keep surveying until you find the right thing and then you put the Dancers Dead on the correct creature. If you don't have either of those things, then it doesn't really do anything. But it's a one-of, so the theory is you're just entombing for it when you want it. But there are occasions that we've been playing this where it's been in our hand and we've had to discard it with whatever. And then it feels a little bit awkward. Now you can reanimate it still and just have a 7/7 flying trample, which is fine. You know, it's going to do some work. We're having to give up quite a bit to do this because we're having to run things like Dance of the Dead, which is not an ideal reanimation spell. Like, we played it on an Atraxa, and that's fine because you can untap it once and then you've just got your big guy if you want it. And that's fine too. But I'm not a full convert to the old Worldgorger Dragon plan yet. I know previous builds ran it's like Piranha Marsh, I think it is a come into play tap land that makes your opponent lose 1 life when it enters. So that and Worldgorger Dragon is just a combo, you just drain your opponent out. But like, I've seen people saying you can use the Worldgorger to drain out your opponent using Archon of Cruelty, which that does work, but it does feel a bit like having your diamond shoes too tight because you've already got the Archon of Cruelty and then you're putting the Worldgorger Dragon on top. And that often isn't necessarily a thing you need, but it's not always something you don't need, right? So it is not always superfluous. Sometimes you will actually need that to go off and, you know, beat another combo deck or whatever. So it's not entirely irrelevant having it. So I'm not wholly convinced, but I'm also not really a big Reanimator player. And Roodslay, who's been absolutely crushing events lately, clearly thinks it is the right thing to be doing. They've been doing pretty well with it. As for the sideboard, I do kind of like the plan, but the fact that we don't have any cards to board in against decks, like we have Duress to sort of break up some combo decks, but that's all we get access to. And that is not enough, in my opinion. I would rather have the more traditional sideboard where you have, you know, either some creatures or some show and tells, and you get to run like whatever you want, whether it's Serenity, Wear Tear, bounce spells, Fairy Macabres. You know, you actually get to interact with your opponent's sideboard. But there's still a lot to be said for being a deck that your opponent has to react to you. Like, there's very few matchups where we're going to be the slower deck, right? We're going to be the one that our opponent is having to do stuff around. Now, you know, sometimes you'll have Storm or Oops or Spells or whatever, and they're going to be going underneath you, and that's just the nature of things. So maybe you can just chalk those up as being things that you don't want to happen and move on with your life. Because against those matchups, if you're on the play, then you can maybe take apart the hand anyway, and that's enough. And if you're on the draw, you're probably losing anyway, and is like playing some like weird Mind Break Trap or Fairy Macabres in the sideboard going to help that much against it? Like, it's going to help in the mirror, but that's about it. So I'm not entirely sure what the perfect build of the sort of mono black or black splashing Reanimator deck is. But I did enjoy playing this one. I think Worldgorger Dragon is a really cool card. I remember people being very excited when it was a thing that you could do again. I'm still thinking about that last game. If we don't Griselbrand to try and find hand disruption, and they have a natural order in hand, we do just lose. Right? Is that true? They had 4 guys, potentially. Maybe we're not supposed to activate the Griselbrand. I don't know. I definitely don't want our opponent to have the action right there, but I guess if they could like cradle into, if they could cradle and Talon Gates, we're definitely dead. They have the natural order. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tricky one to think about, and I'm not going to try and think about it anymore because I'm going to bed and I'm going away for the weekend afterwards. So, or for the end of the week, the beginning of the weekend, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to have a nice recharge, and I will have my videos up as per usual for you, and you won't notice, but by the time this comes out, I would have already had my nice little break and hopefully should be refreshed. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member if you want to support the channel. You get access to videos early and it only costs you £1 a month. So I'd appreciate anyone who fancies it, but there's by no means any need to do that if you can't financially afford it and don't want to. Alright, plug over and done with. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.